Okay, this is a meeting of the Town Hall Building, Cohasset Town Hall Building Committee, April 27, 2022 at 6:04 p.m. We'll do a roll call. I say your first name, repeat your full name, and that you're here. Mark?
Mark Cameron here.
Gert?
Garrett Lubitz here.
Wayne?
Wayne Sawchuck here.
Carolyn?
Carolyn Coffey here.
And Phil Lear here. Thank you. All right, we have an agenda. Michelle, do we have any minutes to approve by any chance?
I have not seen any that need to be approved.
Okay, we need to get those finished up and get them turned in so we can get some more notes on the website.
2 of those are in my court. I'll fess up to it. So I have to draft them.
Okay. I've got 2 as well.
I think I have 2 as well.
Okay. All right, first thing we have on the agenda is an update on design. Who wants to take that? John?
Okay, so I guess, basically we're at a point where, Johnson Roberts was moving along with their design. Construction documents are not done. Still a good amount of work to go, but a lot of good work done. There was some feedback a number of weeks ago that there's rumblings in the town that they would not support the scope of work that has been proposed and worked on by the committee. And there is a indication on the table that folks are saying that we should be considering a full renovation project only, meaning do not put up don't take down and put up a new annex, and still continue with the proposed renovation of the existing town hall. Obviously, from a timing standpoint, it kind of puts you back to a square one with not with the old town hall, because the old town hall, the scope would remain largely the same. Again, when it comes to systems, that's something different, but Johnson Roberts would be starting over again for the annex building, right from programming on up. From the process of what can you fit into a renovated annex building. What are you keeping? What are you going to be able to fix? What can't you fix? Kind of all that. So that whole school of thought that had been kind of cast away when the decision was build a new one has to be reimagined and redone. So as of right now, there is no update on design from Johnson Roberts. Basically what I asked them to do and forwarded to Michelle was give us a cost to get right back where we are now. So knowing that there's some money left over, and Michelle's looking into what that is, what would the cost be to start anew and kind of get all the way back here again to right now, partly through construction documents to, go in front of some town. Again, this is independent of the discussion of where we get that money and how we do it, knowing that we would have some money to start with based on the fact that, we've got a chunk of money that we're working with right now that was going to get us through construction documents. So maybe there's a couple $100,000 still to spend, but I have to go back to, give me 1 second. I had it open here.
So, John, can I jump in for a minute?
Please do while I find that.
So I think in terms of the pricing, the last pricing that we went through with some updated numbers, just for everybody here it started to climb. And I don't say there was any external communication from the Board of Select or any other bodies in town that directed us towards a renovation. It was just as the budget seemed to be climbing from where it had previously been. It was maybe once hoped it would be $10 or $12 million for the project. We were heading more towards 15 or 16. And then we even started getting closer to our last set of numbers with escalations and contingency with construction planning to start in early 23 or mid 23, that the numbers began to climb into the 18s and towards the 19s. And so maybe a few of us, myself included here, just kind of started to wonder, is this project that has had some pushback in the past outside of the committee from the public and, priorities with schools, is it something that still seems palatable to the town? So I don't say there was any direction from anybody outside of town, outside of this group here, that just started to ask these questions. And it was just really a reaffirming that we are still to stay the course that we've been, knowing where the numbers are tending to climb. Everything's climbing right now. Why should this be any different? And maybe the renovation thing and would be, do we focus on the 1800 structure rather than putting renovation money into the 1980 structure? So again, I think we all have the general notion that we want something to happen. We want to progress. We want to move this along. And it just opened the question. I don't think there was ever an answer. It just opened and raised the question as the budget continues to climb. Is this something that is still palatable?
No, thank you. No, thank you for that. That's really good details. I have the number I called up. So to get us back to a point where we would be able to bid a renovation only, again, scope to be determined, of both of the entire building, would be about $444,000, of which you have a couple $100,000 of it already as the remainder from the first. That number, Michelle's looking into that number. So let's assume you would need another couple $100,000 on top of what you have to get us back to a point where you would bid the project. Again, those numbers don't include the actual bidding of the project for Johnson Roberts, nor does it include the construction administration. But so to kind of restart and get the annex building piece brought back. And again, if there was an option where you would do just to what Mark just said, just the historic structure, again, we would have to see the code implications of that. But, a lot of that's designed, obviously, because that's what was going to be in the existing project. So, that would be a smaller subset, I would expect. But again, we'd have to look at that to see what code things would be triggered by doing just a renovation to the historic structure. So anyway.
And John, that's just the costs of the expenditures, right? So in terms of timing to get back to this point, what would you, and again, I'm not holding you to a timeline, but is that like another 18 months like we'd be looking at?
Great question. And I had that. Phil, what was the, did we say, I think you had said, bidding phase, about 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
And the key to that is, it could be closer to 6 if decisions were fast. If decisions are slow,
we're lightning fast.
We get through, you start having these meetings and suddenly it's summertime, it might not be as easy to get quorum, you know what I mean? So 6 to 8 months to restart, whenever you say restart, to get to a point where we would have biddable renovation only drawings. Again, if it were just the historical portion, something shorter in there, but not, I wouldn't say incredibly shorter, because you still have to go, if you're going to do this, you still have to, run through the paces and check it out and get the buy off from the rest of the, from the select board and all of that before you say, okay, this is our new, is everybody good with our new running orders? And then actually start doing it. And then figure out where we get the extra couple $100,000, for the designer. So who wants to go next?
I just want to add one thing to what Mark had said earlier, which is that, that this is not we're not receiving this directive from the select board or any other body at this point. And just would point out that when I was flipping through the town warrant, I noticed that both advisory and select board unanimously recommended the adoption of our warrant article at upcoming town meeting. So, which indicates to me that there is still some support, at least among those bodies, for this project going forward.
So you have a couple, I think you have a couple of choices here, guys. If you know, one of the things we could do, and obviously the monies at town meeting were to get a CM on board. And if that were to happen, you know, you would have the benefit of the feedback of another construction professional to say, okay, if you were going to still do new, how could we do it as cost effective? Like, you know, you're kind of getting that feedback of that back and forth we talked about. But again, it's still, to Mark's point, if the number is cresting around 18, we're talking about things that could maybe get it back to 17. We're not talking about things that get it down to 15 or 14, unless you start talking about programming, unless you start talking about space. And that's the harsh reality right now of where the marketplace is. So, you know, you're at a point now where you're either still all in on the program and what we're going to do, and everybody's loved it along the way. Seems like the only thing that people won't love is the price. And obviously it's a big component. Or do you retune and send Johnson Roberts in a different direction? You know, or do you do some of both? And, you know, the drawings that they're doing don't go bad. Do you have them look a little bit more into this renovation only and spend some money to kind of figure it out? And do you still get a CM on board to help you do that too? So there's lots of ways to skin the cat.
I think it might be worthwhile to perhaps amend the motion at town meeting for the CM and make it so that it is for the CM and or almost anything else that we need it for, in order to give you a $200,000 cushion towards the money, if in fact there's enough consensus to sort of renovate it in a fashion that, you know, uses as much of the style and everything that's already been designed, and perhaps change the entrance in the center instead of the going around the corner and stuff like that, and doing some things, and then doing the old town hall the way it's been set up now. I don't know, the amount of space that's in the existing town hall addition is almost equal to the space that's going to be in the new town hall addition, right, in terms of square footage.
Carolyn?
You're on mute, Carol.
I think we've invested a lot of time and energy in developing the program that we have, and I think the design meets those needs really, really well, and we have not otherwise been directed to do anything different. But I think having the answers to these questions is really important as the costs keep creeping upwards. And as far as I'm concerned, we have done what we think is the best thing for the town in pursuing the program that we have right now. And that getting this information from you guys has been really helpful. And I think when we get in front of the select board and advisory again, and costs are going up, having the answers to these questions is great. But the only thing that's going to make the decision on this is how this is going to be paid for. And the only way that we're going to know that is by meeting with the finance committee and figuring out what the individual tax burden is going to be on the average household and all that kind of stuff. And so that's incumbent upon us to find out. But so as far as I'm concerned, we keep pressing onward until directed otherwise. That's mine. Michelle?
Sorry, Michelle?
So to Carolyn's point, we have scheduled mid-May to talk about an entire infrastructure plan throughout the town and how things will be funded. Town hall is obviously one of those items. The school is another. Fields are another. Public safety. So I encourage everyone to participate in those meetings, because that's really where we're going to find out the true costs of, the impact on the community to approve something as small as town hall and as large as a new school. So as soon as we have that scheduled, we'll make sure that you're invited and you can be involved in that.
Great point. Mark?
And just to add it with the pre-construction, we talked about that briefly in other meetings, but the real crutches here is if we get that money for the pre-construction, it really makes no sense to engage and spend it unless we have a strong feeling the project overall is going to go forward, because otherwise that money spent brings little value.
So here's the question is, when it comes to the CM, when the number, to Wayne's point about if you could spread the money out and do it for other things, when we talked about that, we talked about getting a CM on board for full pre-construction all the way through bidding. You could bring a CM on board and for the express purpose of an estimate to start. Do you know what I mean? And just, if the thought was, okay, let's keep pressing, but maybe before we do that, the problem, the value of the CM gets worn away the further the design moves to completion. Okay, because at the end of the day, Johnson Roberts finishes their design, CM says, "Oh, I wouldn't have done this way, with this in the market, let's do something else here." It's redesign. So you're paying Johnson Roberts money to redesign something. Or you kind of get them on board and use them to at least do the gut check right now and say, where are we? Again, we do that. It's weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, to get that process going and get them on.
Is it harder to find a PM for that type of work, John, as opposed to basically dangling a job and saying, hey, we're looking for you to basically guide us through this process, this project that we feel like we're going forward?
Garrett, I think the CMs look at a job like this as, again, I spoke to one, they realize it can be a phased approach. They realize their involvement, may or may not end up in a project. But, basically that's up to us. It's incumbent on us to, once we get the approval from the state, to go and in the RFQ say, here's where the project stands right now, and just kind of put it out there. And the ones that are like, too complicated are like, the ones that are shrewd will say, I've seen in the newspaper that they're also going to be going for a school later. You know what I mean? And then suddenly it becomes, they want a relationship with the town because you have that. Oh, and I heard something about a public safety bill. Like suddenly somebody comes in and is like, I'm all in. You know what I mean? So maybe it's a small carrot in the beginning, but I think their input still has some value here. Doesn't mean we have to, and you could phase it too. Literally, you could say, estimate is X, not sure about pre-construction yet, but in the RFQ, we would say, we reserve the right to keep you on for that next phase once we're sure what we're doing. You know what I mean? And kind of phrase it that way. As long as we're clear that the project would be let in phases, estimate first, pre-con second, if we knew it was an approval, if we knew which way we were going, and then ultimately construction dollars, and a GMP and construction dollars kind of for that big third piece. The front piece could be as little as 10 to 15,000 for that estimate to say, hey, here's a set of documents. Tell us what you think.
Which is probably something that makes sense to get us, real market feedback for this project, and getting that in. I think that would help us guide where it's at financially.
So let me ask this question. So you guys have town meeting that just is about to happen. Okay, let's say we get a little bit of flexibility on the money. That's great. When is the next town meeting? The fall, right?
Yes.
It
The end of November.
Yeah, the
Okay.
date hasn't been set yet.
Okay, so is the thought that, okay, it's April. we wouldn't, if Phil and Stu, if at some point, okay, we worked through all this and said, you know what, keep going. How long to finish the drawings you have now? Forget about, forget about input from a CM and whatever time that would take. But what's your time to completion for biddable documents from right now?
I think we're at 85% construction documents right now. My guess would be it'll take us a little while to start up, because we gotta get staff back up on it and do some other things. But I would say a couple of months. Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of, in round terms, it's like 2 months before we can get it out the door to bid. And then it will be, 6 weeks to bid it and a couple weeks to sign a contract. So call that 2 months to bid and sign somebody up.
John and Michelle, can I logistically, if we get approved on Monday, the funds aren't available to us until July, correct?
Yes and no. Yes, the way the motion currently stands. However, if you want to shift the motion so the funds are available immediately, we can do that. I think we'd have to know that now. I don't even know if it's too late at this point, but I don't think all the motions have been completed. So I think we may be able to sneak that in.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to, can we do if it gets approved and it's not available, are we in a position to be able to start the RFP, go through all that process right away?
That's just cost. That's cost from us, and it's not, we have money in our contract, whatever you have us do, we're doing. It's no big deal.
Yeah, as long as we have enough money to get it going.
So we do. Here's the thing, so the question is more, Phil and Stu, if the idea is to perfect world, if the drawings are this far along, the way this is kind of playing out, if no scope changes involved, let's go down that road first. It would take us roughly, could be 2 to 3 months to have a CM on board. Okay. And then they're on board, they give us a cost, we do some shaking and baking. In the end, we're trying to work towards bidding so that we hit that next town meeting with the full value. That's ultimately where this kind of plays out. So at some point the CM's on board, Johnson Roberts starts up again, whatever drawings they have right now, give us, stop print, give us a set. We make that stuff available to whoever wants to look at the job as a CM so they know what they're getting themselves into. And we say right off the bat, what we're going to do is look to you for an estimate based on a set of 85% CDs, and then pre-construction for a couple of months. So suddenly that money, if we can get the flexibility in it, it's great because it helps us, maybe towards Johnson Roberts, towards bidding or whatever, and then we're getting ready for the big ask in the fall. That's kind of where I see this going. Now, if you're going to change direction and suddenly renovate only, there's no way you're ready for the fall town meeting because there's just too much work to do to get us, again, like they said, 6 to 8 months to get us kind of back to where we are. And you would be looking at this town meeting again next year for the renovate only project. So even though you've maybe saved because you've lessened the scope, you've let construction escalate the whole other year at what could be another 7 to 9% for the year for construction. So save, lose kind of thing. You'll still probably save a little bit. But again,
we'll have a shitty building at the end of the day.
Well, same, and again, same, to Wayne's point, square footage is, new renovate, depending on how exhaustive the renovation has to be. Mark can, any of us who've worked and done renovations know that you can sometimes spend pretty darn close to what it would have cost you to build it new.
You can spend more. You can spend more. I've seen it.
Or you can spend more.
Yep.
So that's the whole thing. So at the end of the day, it's a point to consider. The move that would save the most money would be to just renovate the old. You've got CPC money, but that doesn't alleviate the problem you have with the current annex. Those problems continue. Is it a little bit of good money after bad. Like that's, again, that really hasn't been looked at. Because remember, we, that was kind of like, oh, kind of let's start over. So again, there's stuff to consider. So we could get started with a CM. Again, the money coming later, that's fine. Even if it's available July, it's not a big deal. Because we would just say that's the timing. You can have the drawings and contracts ready, boom, do the estimate. Okay, is everybody okay with where it is? And then the question becomes, what drawing manipulation has to take place, what scopes? If that number is at 18 and the number needs to be 17, there's a series of value engineering that needs to take place, in concert with the CM and everybody else to still be driving towards a November town meeting. So if it's mid-November, back up 6 weeks, because the bidding, even though it's CM at risk, there's still a trade bidding component, where they're putting out all of the packages, and then they're putting out all the non-trade packages as well. It's a lot of work to kind of come to that number. Or we go to town meeting with a budget number. And at least you've had a CM that's looked at it once, a CM that's looked at it maybe twice. We go to town meeting in November with a budget number and don't push the buyout, but they know that now that you're bidding a job to start in the spring, but you already have the approval. I get this thing approved as soon as you can, I would think, with as much info as you can.
May I ask a question? Sorry, Tucker here. Sorry I was late, but here now. I've missed something. Are we considering not moving forward with our project that we've put all the time into? Are we considering pivoting? Is that what is happening here?
We're getting answers to questions, anticipating that they will be asked as the price tag keeps ticking upward.
Oh, okay. So it's not that we as a group are necessarily saying this is what we're thinking. It's saying we're talking out the questions we think that are going to come up.
Yeah, and I maybe even go a little bit further than that, Tucker, and say that we are trying to make sure that we have thought through the alternatives here, right? So that we at least know when the questions come up that, well, if it's going to cost $19 million to rebuild the annex and renovate the old town hall, well, why didn't we just renovate the old town hall? Well, what would that have cost us? And we need to be able to figure out what some of those deltas are. I think otherwise we're going to be caught flat-footed. And if it turns out that that it's $9 million to perform a complete renovation of the annex and the old town hall, and that's what the town supports, and that's what they want to do, I don't know that we can push ahead with a project that the town isn't going to support, right? So we have to figure out what these things are going to cost and understand what the differentials are, so that we can then make a strong recommendation and be able to answer the responses and the questions and criticisms that people have. Yeah. So Josiah, no, who's speaking? Sorry, this is Garrett. Yeah.
Oh, Garrett. It's Garrett. Sorry, I was like, that didn't sound like Josiah. Question for you then on that. I completely understand wanting to put forward a project the town will support. In regards to what we think will and won't pass at town meeting, is the thought that our project as we had it is not going to pass? Or are we just, I guess where I'm coming at is, I don't know why we don't just go with our project and ask for it. And if the town doesn't want it, then be like, okay, clearly people don't actually want a project of a whole thing and then go for a renovation. Are you just saying that we should try to predict which is right?
Well, I think there's a little bit of concern, right? So when we initially started this project, there was the number that had been thrown out of $12 million, right? It was at $11 or $12 million is what we were supposed to target. And that number was just sort of plucked out of thin air because somebody liked the sound of it. And it seemed like a number that everybody would buy into.
It was because they thought they could fit that in the operating budget.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay, so there was some basis in the number. It wasn't entirely plucked out of thin air. But then as we started looking at schematics that we were pulling together, it looked like the project was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $16 million, and then drifting up to $17 million. And then with the last set of numbers that we received, it looks like it's 18, very close to $19 million now. And so the question is really, we haven't really thought about this project as a $19 million project in the past, right? We've been thinking about it in our own minds, I think probably as like a $15, $16 million project, and felt comfortable that, it's going to be a tough ask, but we probably, we think that we can sell it. At $19 million, are we going to be able to sell it? I hope so. And I think that I think that it's worth looking at the options and, sort of, within this group. I mean, I think that we've done a great job coming up with a project that's cost effective and meets the needs of the town. But I also think we have to understand that if, there is a number at which we get to that the town's not going to support. And I don't know what that number is. And that's why I think it's important that Carolyn's point was, we don't know what it's going to actually cost. So that's why we need to understand what the financing of this looks like, because at the end of the day, people are going to look at it and they're going to say, how does this impact my property tax bill, right? That's what they're going to look at. And if we can tell them this is going to cost you $300 a year over 10 years, well, they now have something that they can think about and understand what it's going to cost them. And then they can make a decision. Is it worth it to me? And that's, that's where it becomes a harder or easier ask, depending on what that number looks like. And we just don't have that number right now.
Right. Okay. I feel like I just want to be clear. I completely understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree in any way, but I sort of feel like we're in this scenario because we've spent so much time pondering how to sell this project at each price point that we've delayed it back and back and back. So it's like, no, don't go at this town meeting. Oh, let's spend all this time to get ready to justify it for the price we have now. And then at the next town meeting, we're you know what I mean? This is now the third town meeting we're going to that we're not going to present our thing at, that we're saying we'll delay till next one. So I don't disagree. And I want to be so clear. I'm a team player. Whatever we decide to do, I do personally feel, and I'm sure everyone feels this way in some way, and I'm sure it's been said, but I feel like we need to try to put a stake in the ground on this. If we can, if it's like, let's get the numbers, let's get it, and let's bring it, and either have it said yes or no. I don't know. That's just how I feel. Happy to do anything again. I just sort of feel like we're in limbo a little bit in that we haven't met that much. And so I agree, it's good to get this, but I guess I didn't realize this is what we were doing a while ago. So I don't know. That's my thoughts on it. And I'm good to do whatever, but I do think we should really if we're going to do it this time, let's do it. And if it turns out to be not right, have it said no. But I don't know. I feel like our cost is so much exorbitantly higher because we were trying to justify $14.5 million originally. Just my thoughts. I could be completely unrealistic.
I mean, our cost is exorbitantly higher because we're facing serious inflation and escalation in a market right now. We're also having to answer hard questions like, how much is this going to cost? And sure, it would be easy to sit here and say 20 million, but then we're going to be scrutinized as to how we got there. And so we've got a lot of due diligence goes in there. I mean, sure, it's easy to round up to a number that we all are healthy and confident in, but we've got to recognize that that's not going to win this and win the voice of the public. So we're forced to have to answer hard questions such as, how much is it going to cost?
Yeah, just to follow up on Mark's point about the costs, is that, if we had rushed and tried to get approval for the project back in November, we'd now be in a situation of looking at trying to get more money for this project, right? This isn't the cost is the cost. And if we had, it wouldn't have become a fixed cost back in November. We'd be now looking at overages, and we'd be trying to figure out how we're going to come up with another $3 or $4 million to foot the bill, the difference.
Right. But by that logic, couldn't we just be doing the same thing again and whenever the next town meeting is? If I'm not trying
Absolutely.
to be disagreeable or anything.
No, Tucker, I think it's important to just to hear. So when the budget, there was a budget that was done And then as Mark's talking about this number, you know, this, where did this, you know, where did this 18 come from? What happened was we had been kind of tracking a number in the sixes, okay? And then, and we had, and again, not.
What do you mean the sixes?
$600 a square foot, 6 and change, okay?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then in roughly in October, we bid a project and it was low 630s, okay? We just bid a project last week, it was 750. All right, and in March, we had said, we're seeing inflation. So we reran the numbers for you know, Steve Kirby and I were kind of going back and forth with Mark Cameron. And, you know, if you put that number in there in the low sevens or mid sevens, it spits out a number at the bottom that's close to 18 million. And I think that's when everybody was like, wait a minute, what just happened? And I'm telling you, we just bid a job. 6 months later, the price went up over almost $120 a square foot. Again, apple and an orange, different kinds of buildings. But again, cost of construction, you know, a lot of these things differ maybe by 5 to 10%, depending on type of building. But overall, you still get the general feel that, man, things are just still going up. So I think, so, you know, we put this out there back in March, and here we are, you know, 6-7 weeks later, and just got a data point that says, yeah, we were right on. So this angst over the, you know, and again, Johnson Roberts was working the whole time. And it, you know, when the, you know, folks in the committee said, wait a minute, we've got to kind of consider this, that last check of the number or reshake of the number, you know, we basically said, yeah, AM Fogarty did an estimate in, you know, just about the beginning of December, end of November, beginning of December. Yeah, everything was kind of status quo and whatever. But we just started seeing through those next 4 months enough stuff to give pause. We put in a you know, kind of a ballpark number that now, even 6 weeks after we told you guys, looks like it's coming true. So we are, you know, we're in that place right now, and that's the
Right.
thing. So it's really,
But
everybody was doing everything they were supposed to. The problem is the market wasn't behaving like we had hoped it would, and continued to escalate past the escalation that the cost estimator carried in November. So
Right. But, and I'm hope no one thinks I'm insinuating someone's doing something they're not supposed to be doing, because I'm not saying that at all. John, all I'm saying is that
not at all. Not at all.
We're
in crazy times, Tucker.
we're in crazy times. So believe me, I get it. I've been building a house during this whole process too, so I've gotten to see it on two sides. But all I'm saying is that it seems to me like we could be trying to get a number. I guess I don't get exactly what the goal is. Like, I hear what you're saying, Mark. I totally agree. Like, we'd like to get the number, but it seems like we're never able to arrive at a number that we're willing to say is the number, which leads me to believe, I don't know, I've never done anything municipal before, so I have no idea, but is there a different strategy or approach we should be taking to this, so we don't end up one day just saying, like, let's not do it because we're at 50 million. You know what I mean? Not that it would ever get there, but I don't know. Is there something else we should be doing on this? Or do we need to identify like exactly what the things are we need to make us all feel comfortable going in front of it? I don't know. And maybe everyone else knows that and I've just missed it. And if so, like, I guess that's on me. But it seems to me that we always kind of go around on the same thing, myself included. And maybe we just need to get out there. I don't know what pieces of information we need. And do we feel like we're able to get them and they're able to be like held to that? And if not, we might want to examine another strategy. I don't know. That would just be my take on the thing. But I feel like if everyone or if most people disagree, I'm happy to keep doing this, whatever we need to do and is right.
Michelle?
So Tucker, you're not off base. I don't know if you heard this piece, but the select board as a whole wants to look at all infrastructure projects throughout the town that are kind of impending, which would be town hall, schools, public safety, fields, and kind of come up with a big plan as to how we're going to fund all of these things. I think in absence of that bigger conversation of how we're going to actually fund these items, I don't know what type of appetite the community will have to approve these projects in silos. It's certainly something you can ask. I mean, town meeting's Monday night. By the way, we do need a speaker to speak on the article that you're asking for. And I do believe Monday night, you may be asked some questions about this project that you may or may not be prepared to discuss. I think the community as a whole is looking for us for the finance piece. Even though that's not really what we were charged with, I think that that's what the community is looking for. I don't think there's any dispute out there that the project has been designed saving as much square footage as you can. I don't think anyone thinks that this is an extravagant building. I think people really appreciate the work of this community and how much of thought has gone into this particular building. I think the biggest hiccup is that funding piece that I don't know we will have the answer to until they look at infrastructure as a whole. That was long-winded, but that was kind of what's going on.
Phil?
I did a quick analysis on the Fogarty estimate. Now, John just said that reminded you all that was done in November of last year, and the numbers have all gone up. So, but if you think about it percentage wise, what I did is I took a look at what you'll recall that estimate was broken down between the addition and the renovation project. And so we have some numbers that we can compare and contrast. One of those had the site work in it. And if I separate that out, I just get down to the new construction costs versus the renovation construction costs, right? And the difference there is about $460 a square foot versus $340 a square foot. Okay, so the difference between renovation and new is about $120 a foot.
I'm sorry, which is which? What did you?
The new building was about 460, renovation was about 340. The difference is about 120. Now, your existing building is about 9,900 square feet. If you call it 10,000 square feet at $120 a foot, that's $1.2 million, or roughly 10%. So if you just did renovation based on the Fogarty numbers, you save 10%. Now you can escalate that up based on the numbers that John gave you, but I think the difference is probably going to be about the same, about 10%. And John has just said that if we wait a year, you may have an increase in escalation between 7 and 9. From that 10% savings, you have to subtract the additional fees they have to pay. So I don't know exactly what those numbers are going to be, but just doing a renovation project versus the addition and renovation and pushing it out another year, you may end up with a renovation project, as Caroline described it, for the same amount of money a year from now.
Phil, that would be, can you, is there a way for you to like take a picture of what you did and send it to me or something? Because I think
it's pretty ugly, Caroline, but I could put it together.
We have some stuff too. I'll share it with you.
Those are the kinds of things I think people are going to ask those questions, and if we can address them coherently with good backup information like that, then that will help get people on board with the project, I think.
Stu and Phil, from a design perspective, how achievable would it be to renovate the historic building and not touch the 1980s for now? I mean, essentially, we're kicking the can down the road. We're not investing in it. But from a mechanical systems, I mean, that one building is sort of dependent on the other. Is it even conceivably possible with the building with the design that you guys have currently put together for us for the historic building? Could that be built first and slightly modified? Some obviously, of course, some things would need to change, but is that conceivably possible, or completely no way? It's integrated way too much. It would be a total new design.
Yeah, it's a complicated question because it's not two separate buildings. It's really one building and that we have one set of systems in the building. So if you renovate part of the building, you're really probably still going to have to redo the systems in most of the building, right? And it just gets complicated. So I can't give you a very exact answer, but it would, if we only did renovations to the historic building, it wouldn't be just the number that you're seeing for renovations in the cost estimate. There's going to be some additional stuff that goes along there. Now, if you were going to come along later and put another, tear the existing addition down and put a new addition, there'd be additional costs, and I'm sure it would cost, those two projects would cost far in excess of doing it all at one time.
You're as an example, you're relocating the staff twice.
You've got your site work twice. You've got everything twice.
That phasing impact is going to be huge on two separate projects, and it will make a significant impact on the two of them. It would take time as well. It's not as simple as just putting an X through the addition portion on the plans and saying just build this portion. We'd need to redesign it so that we can support
Yeah, I mean,
and allow for the second phase.
As an example, if any of the heating, the new heating and cooling was going for the old building was going to be housed in the new building,
right?
Where were you going to put it now? Outside of the old building, okay. And then when you finally decide at some point to do the new building, you're going to have to pay to move the system, come up with or disconnect the system. There's just iterations of moving things away and then bringing them back. Because it's almost impossible to keep the old town hall work in the footprint of the old town hall. There's going to be code implications as well, because the old portion of the building is larger than the addition. Just that scope is going to force us to make improvements to the addition, even if you don't want to. The handicap code is going to make us make that entire building completely accessible, right? We may have to do fire protection in that existing building. There's going to be a lot of things. We may need emergency lighting. We need other code upgrades may be required in that addition that are going to add to that cost. And then you may have to demolish when you get to phase two. So let me ask a question. And all of the concerns are of course valid in this marketplace, it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy to not have these concerns. Is the move here to, remember, this isn't the big ask, to your point, Michelle, there may be some questions, about where's it going? How's it going? Costs, what are we doing? Is the thought to maybe stay the path, get the CM, tell people we're getting the CM, get some real-time input and seek and still continue where we are. Maybe, Johnson Roberts puts on a hold for a short period of time so that we still get the benefit of having that CM. The issue is that the 7 months between now and town meeting are going to go incredibly fast. Not wanting them to start to redesign, if that's clear. If no one's told us to do that, but everyone's just kind of reacting to what possible reactions could be from the town. If we get too far, maybe I think the prudent thing might be to keep going a little further and at least get the CM and get their input, because then it becomes a little more real. I'm not saying Fogarty's numbers aren't real, but you've got the benefit of the actual contractor is going to build your job to do this.
They may have some pretty important value engineering insight as well.
Yeah, I mean, we
things that we could do or do ahead of time. This.
I mean, we're seeing stuff from CMs, and I got one from a company called Consigli this week, where they put out a quarterly kind of a market update, and it says, and it's only 2 pages, and one of the things it says is, here's what we're seeing for lead times, and here's what we're seeing for escalation in certain building products. And while some things may have improved, some things are still crazy. Roofing has gotten better, but roofing is still it's still out there. It's 8 to 10 months. You know, if you want insulation for, again, we don't have that issue here. If you want insulation for a flat roof, you know, like your schools. So there are things that we're always going to be playing against. So I think that the expertise of those folks is key, I think, to maybe helping have another voice that may help continue to sell the project, or at a bare minimum, gives everyone here a gut check that says, yeah, here, we're at this number. I mean, because short of you all saying and giving Johnson Roberts the word to change direction right now, that's kind of the only thing we can do, is kind of get a little bit further, see where it goes. Now, all of these questions about renovation and stuff were all things that were talked about way back before the decision was made. If those numbers and thoughts need to be refreshed about a old town hall renovation only so that we have it, that's great, but that's not something you're going to have an answer for by town meeting, you know, in a week and a half. That's, you know, you might be able to get something, maybe able to get something back of napkin, you know, but that's as far as it would go. To me, that's the kind of question that, you know, maybe do you have to, you know, any of these community forums we've had, that's where those questions should be being asked, you know, well, have you considered this? Because by the time we get to the next town meeting, the hope would be to be going there with the number, you know, and at that point, you've spent all of your design fees.
I have just two points that I've heard myself, and one is people are asking about how the town hall runs, how the town hall has been running over the last year in terms of personnel and people access to the building, and are any changes anticipated as a result of the whole COVID-19 pandemic that's going to probably be with us forever at some point. That's one. The second is, I know that there are a couple of people in the audience every year that don't consider the $18 million the number, but the amount of 18 million that is being financed and what the total financing cost is. So they stand up and say, this isn't costing you X number of dollars, it's costing you twice that because of the interest and stuff. And unfortunately, interest rates are now getting a little higher than zero, like they've been for a long time, and they're at a 40-year high. You know, a first mortgage on a house now is 5%, they're asking. So what's going to happen with interest in terms of the cost? And I think they think that because at $11 million, it was going to be covered by our regular budget, and there was almost going to be no interest. It would be just, you know, pay off this in this fashion. So those are my two comments.
John, this, I know we're down two items here, but can you sort of explain how the CM works with you and Johnson Roberts and us, how they fit into the leadership role?
So basically, Phil, you're hiring your builder before your plans are done. So, you know, along the way here, you've been getting estimates from Phil's estimator, who's very good, but they are a third-party estimator, and that's what they do. You'd be hiring the CM who's going to build your building to actually give you an estimate based on the plans as they are right now. And you get that feedback, that real world feedback of, hey, you know, on this job I bid last week, we saw this kind of pricing coming in for, you know, LVLs or, you know, whatever, you name it. So you get the kind of that real time feedback of people who have a full-time estimating department who are bidding, have jobs being bid every week. And you know, we're seeing more and more communities go with the CM at risk because of that. You know, you used to be complicated you needed, you know, most of the time you wouldn't really consider it unless it was a complicated project. difficult schedule, difficult piece of property, those kind of things, a lot of logistics, where you benefit from the, we'll call them more sophisticated firms. Now, cost is one huge reason why folks are like, see, I'm at risk, we're just going to do it, you know, because of this volatility, it enables you to kind of change on the fly as things are getting closer to bidding, as opposed to, you know, still getting input from AM Fogarty as we're going, but your next piece of cost data comes when you open the bids, as opposed to the process, the open book process with the CM saying, you know, bids come in high, you can start to, you know, for certain non-trade scopes, you can try to de-scope and make changes kind of right there and, you know, kind of work the numbers a little bit. They can ask for best and finals, you know, from the non-trade folks. So there's an element of negotiation that is very public that you get to see. The trade contractors, you don't have that flexibility. Whatever's on the plans is what gets bid. But in the end, you see how that, you know, a design bid build job, you see the trades, about 13 or 14 of them, and then those numbers get turned in, and then you get one number on bid day. When you're doing a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price with the CM, it's open book. You see every single trade, not just the 13 or 14 that I referenced before, but the other 15 to 20 that you typically would never get to see behind the curtain. You know, you would just see numbers on the schedule of values after they've given you the bid and they've been selected. So there's just a greater information available.
I guess I didn't understand that the CM at risk was that you call it the builder. That makes sense. So he's going to be the one that's going to be hiring the subs.
So what would happen is, first we ask the state. They don't say no. You know, I've never heard of a project that's applied for it say no. Then it's qualifications based. We would write an RFQ and say, show us the jobs that you've done. You know, a job in the $15 to $20 million range. You know, and you know, jobs that have had renovation portions. You know, so you get to see qualifications, and then once they pass that bar, then it's a, you know, usually all, you know, most of them will make it, you know, maybe some won't. Then it's a request for proposal, and there's a non-price component and a pricing component. You say, well, wait a minute, how can they give us a price? The plans aren't done. What we're doing is we're giving them a duration. Okay, we tell them it's going to be a 16-month job. Town's going to move out. So what they do is they give us a price, they give us a fee, a percentage of construction. So if we know the job is 16 to 18 million, let's say 16 for the sake of this, you know, if someone's going to give us a response back that says my fee, meaning profit, will be 1.5%. Someone else will come back and say 2.0%. Someone else 2.25. They will also tell us what their management fee is, their general conditions, what they're going to charge us for the foreman, the project manager, all of their, you know, expenses for that duration. Okay, and you're able to see, well, okay, this guy is going to staff the job with an on-site team of 3. This guy's only going to do it for 2, you know, and you get the ability to kind of negotiate that out. The only thing you can't negotiate is the fee. If we tell them 16 million and they say 2%, that $320,000 is, you can't touch it. And if the job ends up costing 18 million, that 320 goes up to 360, you know, so you're not allowed to negotiate fee with them once you pick them. So what we would be doing is saying, you know, so they actually price, they give you their costs, because the rest of the job is an open book process. It's basically, they show us every time they go out and get a price, a set of prices, that buyout is reviewed with the OPM, with the designer, to make sure that proper scope has been carried. They kind of run through it all.
You don't have any say in that. You just have the ability to review to see what.
Oh, you can give feedback. Oh, absolutely. But also in that, before we get there, there's also a pre-qualification process for these subcontractors as well. So the ones that come to the table have, you know, passed a first level of vetting as well. And, you know, in the CM, unlike when the CM's not involved, it's just the experiences of us and Johnson Roberts about a vendor. With the CM involved, if they've had a bad experience with somebody too, it's another set of data that gets to look at that pool and say, "Oh, stay away from that electrician." We wouldn't recommend pre-qualifying them. So that, that plays into it as well. They're part of that team, for that. So, I mean, I think it's a great delivery method in this market. I think the only issue is time, and the ask to town meeting, how close is it getting to the actual bid number based on when we, how we can make all these chips, kind of fall in place, getting the design done, getting their input, getting them on board to begin with, kind of how all these things play together as we move through the year.
And that procurement process takes 2 to 3 months.
So here's the thing. We had some initial discussions with this. The reality would be is what we would need is with the approval, at town meeting, I think we would need to officially, this board makes recommendations. Basically we would need a motion made by the select board to move ahead with CM at risk as a delivery method for the Cohasset Town Hall project. And then with that approval that's recorded in minutes, town council signs off on the certification of why we're moving forward with it.
When are we likely to hear back from the state, and do we have to wait for that before we get started?
Yes, you have to wait. They say 30 to 60 days. I had one approved once in 3 weeks. So it's really on a function of how many others are in there when you submit.
How long ago? Oh, did you submit on our behalf already, or we have to wait until we get approved?
We don't have to wait to get, well, the reality is the application process is the state doesn't care about your funding. They assume you're getting funding. That doesn't prevent me from submitting. All we would need to do is get the vote of the select board because the building committee isn't the contracting entity. You make recommendations to the select board on the project. So we would need a vote from them to say, we're going to go ahead with CM at risk.
Yeah.
We told them about this at a meeting, but I don't think did they vote that?
No, but I don't think we understood that we needed them to do so. They just said, that sounds like a good plan. And it was really in conjunction with the funding on the warrant, as opposed to needing to ask the state. So we've kind of lost a month that we could have submitted this a month ago, because they did give us the okay, but they didn't.
I don't think we had this on the radar, and I think Corey's here and just raised his hand, so.
Yeah.
If you hire the CM and in fact now, and they start working, and in fact, the town doesn't approve it in November, are we obligated to the CM for the full amount of his fee? Or is there something in a contract that says?
No, it's a great question, Rain. What we would do is make sure that the fee is partitioned into estimate, pre-construction, and then construction. So that fee of, the one I used example of $320,000 doesn't even happen, because we would say contingent upon approval at, fall 2022 town meeting and written authorization from the town of Cohasset to proceed. So basically we put hard stops with written notices to proceed. So really all we would be buying from them is the estimate to start. That's it. And then once everyone's comfortable, are we going to move forward? Are we going to change? What are we going to do? Then it's okay. If we're going to stay the course with the town with the project we have, then we're going to open them to part 2, which is pre-construction services. And they would also tell us how much, they have for that, or we can almost set that. But let's say it's another 60 grand. So you're into them 20 for an estimate, 60 for a couple of months of CM services, and then that next bite is the big bite, for building the building. So basically you hire them for that $20,000 estimate, and then they get amendments for each piece. And obviously the big amendment is the guaranteed maximum price. So essentially they end up getting a change order for, $16 million. And then it kind of resets, the GMP resets them to okay, this is now your contract. And they go from being called amendments to now being called change orders moving forward for any adds to the project.
That percentage, is that outside of what they'd be getting on a time and material basis, or for the, the work being done in the, like the 60,000, the 20,000, whatever, or is that part of the end percentage? Meaning,
no, so basically the fees that they give us for an estimate or for pre-con aren't marked up again. They give us basically a lump sum and that they'll bill again. So let's say they tell us that pre-construction, we tell them we need you for 3 months of pre-construction. They tell us it's 90,000. I would expect to see a bill for 33% for the first month, 33% for the second, so 30, 30, 30. However that gets meted out. The whole trick with this, when you're asking them for a proposal, is being as realistic as you can be with your idea of the schedule right now, because you're trying to tell them carry 4 months of pre-construction. They're all going to price it and you get to see what it is. We're going to tell them 16 million of construction so that they base their fee on that. And then lastly, how many months duration for construction, 16 months. So they all price that. So at the end of the day, we kind of do a leveling to see who's giving you the best deal. And you don't have to go. And the other big thing, you get to interview these guys. So unlike design bid build, where we do pre-qualify, CM at Risk allows you the ability to call them in as part of this process and get to meet the folks you're going to be working with for the next 2 years, which is awesome. Meet the superintendent, meet the PM, who's going to be our day-to-day person, and they're going to tell you how they would do this job. Now, obviously, coming into this, they would know that there's still some questions that we need our help on, or we need their help on, but you would still be able to glean, how they would run your project, which is very valuable.
okay, thank you.
Just want to share a note from Corey. Corey Evans is on the select board. He sent me a note saying that the select board cannot approve the CM at Risk without the funding first. So after town meeting, they can do that.
Well, that's what we would expect.
Can't even submit the application. We're not talking, we wouldn't contract. We want the ability to ask the state if we can use the delivery method.
So they don't even have a meeting until May 10th, so town meeting's going to be over anyway. Town meeting's Monday.
Oh, okay, great.
So
Okay, so what I would suggest is if we can get on that agenda, Michelle, I will have it, it's ready to rock and roll. So we've already, I would need a couple of things. We'll need the minutes for that meeting. Got thumbs up from Corey, that's great. Resumes of a couple of folks on the committee who have done construction work or design work and have experience with CM at Risk. So it's what, Mark, I'm looking at you. Garrett, any, you guys, whatever your, whatever the backgrounds are, just of folks who are involved with, and someone needs to be kind of the lead connection between the building committee and the CM at Risk process. And basically then I take that, I get resumes from Phil and Stu, which I already believe I have from another job, where we worked together on a project where we had a CM. And then I get town council's, bio, but I usually just get that from the website, and that all gets put in. And then it's an explanation of the project. There would be a couple other things I would need. We should probably have a meeting the week of the select board meeting. I will make sure we check all the boxes for a couple other things and pieces that go into the application, but really that's it. It's relatively light lifting because we already know enough of, we know the job, we know what the plan would be. And a lot of the questions are about kind of what you're building, who are the players, what's their experience, why do you want to use it? And again, we would say tight site, historic neighborhood, crazy volatile construction market.
John,
You know.
would you be willing to come to town meeting and be available to answer a question about this? If something, this whole construction management thing, I'm getting, more information now, and I think it's positive in that it's the committee doing the right thing, especially in these times.
What date's town meeting?
Monday.
Monday night.
Please hold.
And does the rest of the committee think that that's a good idea or no?
I have a question. Is the rest of the committee going to be in attendance of town meeting?
I don't miss one.
I just want to post the meeting if you're all going to be there in,
Oh, you have to for town
I
meeting?
think you should post it.
okay.
So what time does town meeting start?
Evan?
7 o'clock,
I can make it.
What's the article number? Do we know?
15.
15, so it'll be.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Is this regular town meeting or special?
This is a regular annual town meeting.
So this is budget and everything early, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I can be there by 7.
Okay, so if John's going to be there to speak to this with any questions, I know Corey is going to speak on the article. Who from this committee is going to be speaking on the article? Because we do need someone from this committee to speak on this specific article.
Mark?
Mark, Garrett, Carolyn?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Carolyn went dark on us.
What? My microphone's not working.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm saying, but sure.
Well, I think the article gets read, right? And then.
And then you just need to have a couple of sentences prepared to talk about the need. What's the need? And I think we just went through that whole thing, and John will be there as a crutch in case we need a lifeline.
We don't want it like we're spending more money doing the design. We're spending more money to make sure in this environment that we're going to be able to continue on and protect everybody.
Right. So with that being said, all this conversation is the desire of the board to move forward as originally thought, move forward with an entire renovation, rebuild, and charge ahead, or what are we thinking?
So sure, I think we should ask by individual. I think that's the leading question here tonight. Mark, do you want to move forward as we are currently planned?
Yes.
Garrett, do you want to move ahead as we are currently planned?
Yes.
And Carolyn, the same question.
Yes.
And Wayne?
Yes, if the population isn't in a position where they don't want it. Meaning, I'm in favor of it. But
Okay. I think everybody has concerns, sure. Tucker, are you in favor? We have
Yes.
planned? Okay, so the answer is yes. I endorse it wholeheartedly. I think we've got a fabulous design. I think we've got good teams working on it. The cost of this project is not something that we have any control over. We get the CM at risk in here, and we'll be able to find out a little bit more about the costs and whether there's something in the design we can do to change it, make it better, or save us some money. But until then, I think we move forward with a good job that we've done. What else do we have on the agenda?
So Phil, can we plan for our next meeting? I heard we want to meet before the next select board, so should we try to meet on Monday, May 9th? Does that work for everybody to regroup prior to meeting with the select board?
It's early enough. 5 o'clock would work. 6 may not.
Okay.
I can for me too.
But I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, if it's at 5 o'clock, that's fine. I'll probably be driving though.
okay.
Good for me as well.
5 o'clock. 5 o'clock will probably not work for me, but that's fine if it works for everyone else.
And then as far as the select board on May 10th, would you all like to attend? Because I will post for that as well.
Yes.
I think it'd be good to post it.
Okay,
Be nice to see most everybody there, just support wise for nothing else.
sure.
I have another meeting that night.
Okay.
If we meet May 9th, does that, is the intention, what is the intention of that meeting before the Board of Selectmen? I mean, before we meet with the select board?
Well, we will know at that point if we've got money for the CM at risk. And then we'd be ready for a presentation to the select board.
So that was the nature of my question. You know, does that, if a presentation needs to be made to the select board and we meet the night before,
Well, I think
unless somebody is going to prepare a presentation prior to our meeting that we are going to talk about before before it gets amended. It only gives 24 hours for someone to put something together if you're going to sign it that night. That's my point.
I think we can ask John to put together something that we can review that night, and then maybe you can just make some tweaks if needed.
John knows what we need to get. We're looking for approval from the select board
Okay.
to hire the CM at risk. That's the next step after we get it funded. So that would be what we'd be asking for at that select board meeting.
So all we're going to talk about
Yeah, and
that night then is going to be the CM at risk hiring process.
Yeah, and I think that's wise, Michelle. If we have John do that, he knows what's appropriate to ask properly.
Okay, I'll ask him to pull something together.
Yeah, guys,
Oh, hi,
I
John.
just jumped in my car. Yeah, hi, I'm here. Yeah, I mean, remember, we did speak to them. We kind of gave them the overall view. It will kind of, in my mind, be hey, remember we were here back a few months ago. We talked about CM at risk, ready to move forward with the affirmative vote at town meeting. We need you to vote to accept, move to accept CM at risk as the delivery method for the project due to, and we'll list the items. And, we'll be very specific, and that's what gets recorded in the minutes. The night before, there'll be a couple of things, a couple of plans and some documentation that we'll need the committee to approve that we can also, I'm not sure if the select board needs to approve them. Let me double. We will procure the CM.
We lost you for a second there, John. Can you repeat that?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the night before, there is a document called the CM Plans and Procedures that you have to be able to certify that you guys voted on as well. And basically all that it is a restatement of Chapter 149A of CM at risk procurement, basically an acknowledgement of how we're going to go through the process. Be a two-phase selection process, qualifications based, and it's about a 10-page document. So I will have that for you very shortly, and then we'll vote on that. I'm not sure if the select board needs to vote on that. I need to double check that, or if the fact that the committee votes on it is enough. But I need to check that. But I can find that out in the next day. But anyway, that's what we're going to do at the meeting. So I'll have some stuff for you to review so we can go on record and vote on the 9th. And then, you're making the recommendation to the select board on the 10th. And then they're saying yes.
Okay, great.
And that's just giving us permission to apply to the state to be able to use this method, right? The document?
That's correct. Correct, because we're going to end up back, with a contract with somebody, at some point in the middle of the summer. And that's so you're not asking for money, because at that point, the money we've asked for will fund the money that gets approved, hopefully at town meeting, will fund the cost of the CM up until bidding, up until construction. So, but we're not asking to spend that yet because we don't know who it is. So we would be bringing, as you would with any other contract for approval, back to that entity once we know who it is.
Okay, that sounds great. Are there any other questions or comments? Corey, you jumped in. Did you want to say anything?
No, I was just going to echo kind of what John says. I mean, the board's been brief. We've talked about this before. I do think once the town meeting article, if it is approved at town meeting, the next step being that we have to apply to the state is a fairly clear one. I do think that John, what we'd be looking, and Michelle obviously can handle this brilliantly, which is just getting the language to the select board for the motion. We did that last night with school facilities. It's for a state process. It's important that we have the language ready to go ahead of time. So it sounds like John's already got that teed up. So that's great. And we'll make it clear when you guys come in front of us, making it clear that we're talking about the application to the state. We're not yet talking about engaging a CM yet. That'll be an important distinction so that the select board can understand clearly what it's deciding on. And that'll make it a lot more smooth.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Did we cover everything on the agenda?
I think the last item was the board configuration.
So,
Michelle?
yeah, so Sam has officially resigned from all of his boards and committees with the town clerk. So I think you now have the opportunity to maybe fill this seat if you feel as though it's beneficial. It's completely up to the board. I just had to let you know that Sam has officially relinquished his seat on this committee.
So as right now, as a committee of 7 people, we have to still have, we have to have 4 now. Is that 4? So again, I think it's from an attendance standpoint, it's just something to consider here. If people are missing, if we can start the meeting, if we can't start the meeting, if people are late, just how we want to. Because right now we're still a committee of 8, but we're always down 1.
Well, right now we're a committee of 7 if Sam's officially resigned.
Do we have to do anything, Michelle, to change what we are, or does that functionally do it?
I don't think I understand your question.
We functionally now, our quorum is a 4.
Yes.
But we want a full committee. We don't want 4 people making a decision, I think, on these, big questions for a large town project. In my mind, I think, I don't know, just a thought.
So do we consider bringing somebody on, an 8th person on board? That's I think the question here. And do we have someone that's been following us close enough so that we're not trying to catch them up on 2.5 years worth of work?
And just going to an 8-member board, would that raise the quorum to 5, Michelle, or are we still at 4?
It does, yeah.
Because you have to have at least more than half, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it is, more than half.
So, I mean, you don't have to decide this tonight. If you do know someone that's interested, or if a few people that are interested, what they need to do is just submit an application. They should submit it to the town manager's office. Tracy will get it before the select board so they can review it. And they would make temporary appointments based on applications, and we can go from there. Oh, Corey?
Oh, Corey, yes.
Maybe my understanding is incorrect, but Sam was also on capital budget, or at least some point. Was he the official liaison? Was that the seat he was filling, or was it just a citizen at large seat?
No, he was never liaison. We asked him, but he was just citizen at large at that point. But he did speak in reference to the budget when he spoke at any of our meetings.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think if I think having that voice, Sam's voice on this was very important in understanding the finances and being that unofficial bridge. So I will certainly reach out to my colleagues and people that have been in the capital budget process to see if we can, I don't want to say replace, but bring that experience to your committee, because that's obviously very vital. So.
Great. Thanks. Having a liaison from these different boards at our meetings would be extremely helpful. That was the original plan, and at first there were a few attendees, but it's been a while since we've had someone from some of these other boards join us. So, I mean, I'm fine with a 7-member board personally, as long as the attendance stays up. Don't want to be having meetings with 4 people to make decisions. I think Carolyn mentioned that. But we can certainly maybe shake the trees a little bit and ask, see if there's someone that's been involved with us before or has some construction knowledge that can actually jump in here and add to the discussion. Great. Any other comments? We miss anything? Go ahead.
I had, sorry, one more thing, Phil.
Yep.
Just an idea. And I'm totally fine if this is not where the direction of the board wants to go, but would it be possible to meet with a slight more regular cadence? Sometimes I feel like we only get together when it's decision time. And I wish some of the ideas maybe were socialized or discussed more, even if we don't always have, I don't really know how this works, but I don't know if we need our architect and project manager every time, but we don't meet as a board that frequently. Now, I don't know if that's just because everyone's really busy and it's hard to get here. And if that's the case, that's the case. But I think we might be able to accomplish more, in my opinion, if we met more regularly and socialized our ideas as a committee, not always on decision-making times. That's just my thought of something I've been feeling for a while.
No comments. I think, we've had a little bit of a fiesta here because we've been waiting for the decision on the money for the CM at this town meeting. And then our thought is to get that money and then move forward quickly. And then I think it's going to be a busy summer. I mean, there are times in our schedule where we're backed up, where we need to make decisions on several items, and we need to be. There was a point where we met, once a week to try to get things in line. We have not met for some time now, but we're sort of waiting for that CM to come through and the money for that, so that we don't get too ahead of the design, that the CM can actually be involved in some of the design process that they're so valuable at. So. I don't know, regular meetings are a great thing. Feel like you're out of touch when you haven't gotten together in a month. And when you meet once a week, you get tired of each other. But, that there's a lot of work still to be done, and we're, into it for 2.5 years, and we've got a ways to go. So appreciate everybody hanging in there and doing the work to move forward. But that's certainly a consideration. Anything else? I think we're good. We just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll be in touch. See you on the 9th.
Have a good night.
Bye now.
Yeah, on the 2nd.
The 2nd. Excuse me.